Welcome to Homestand Sports, the podcast for the passionate fan. I'm your host, Albert Vartanian, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Justin Pooni, who
will not be booing Bo Horvat tonight through my television screen.
That sounds like a lie. On today's show, it's all sweepstakes. Yes, Patrick Kane has narrowed down his list of teams he wants to play for and could make that decision as early as next week. But where will he land, and what Patrick Kane will they be getting? The Calgary Flames are open for business. Reports are saying that Calgary are ready to move some key pieces, and at the top of the list is defenseman Nikita Zadorov. The Maple Leafs and Canucks want him, but how much will he cost? And finally, we wrap up with some NHL overtime talk. GMs want to change it. Justin doesn't. I do. We'll discuss what we think the NHL should do. Lots to get to and lots to answer, so let's get this party started. I'm Albert Vartanian, and this is Homestand Sports, where stories, not stats, take center stage. All right, Justin, big week for Patrick Kane. He's getting closer to signing with an NHL team. Him and his agent will meet with coaches and GMs this week, and according to sources around the league, Kane could have his decision made by early next week. So, before we get into teams that would make sense for Patrick Kane, what do you expect to see from a 34-year-old future Hall of Famer who's coming off hip surgery?
So, Albert, I did some research and some digging.
Well, I'm glad you did research for the show.
Before we recorded. So, Patrick Kane underwent hip resurfacing surgery. And this is it's fairly common around NHL circles. It's the surgery that Nicholas Backstrom of the Washington Capitals underwent and is still recovering from. I don't expect Patrick Kane to be Patrick Kane. I don't think he's going to come. This is a very hard surgery to come back from. Ed Jovanovski came back, played, I believe it was 31 games after this surgery. Now, this was much later in his career. I think he was, 30, in his late 30s. Patrick Kane's in his mid-30s, right? A more recent example was Ryan Kesler. He had hip resurfacing surgery when he was in Anaheim and then never played again. Now, this is a guy who I know very well through time with the Canucks. And, ever since his first hip injury he had back in 2011, he was never the same player. But this is a very hard surgery to come back from, Albert. Just the procedures. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not going to go into the medical procedures about it. But this is a very difficult surgery to come back from. We've seen other prominent athletes in the past with hip injuries. Bo Jackson lost his baseball career and football career because of a hip injury. Whatever team acquires Patrick Kane, and we're going to touch on that in a minute, should not expect the Patrick Kane that we even saw last year, a guy who had 21 goals, 36 assists in 70 games. I do not expect that. This is the guy who's going to be off for a very long time, going to be playing in a new city, a new system, all of that, new players, and there's going to be, an acclimation process through there. I just hope that whichever team gets him, and the fans aren't going to measure their expectations. Hell, we got Leaf fans in the building here that are saying, I can't wait till Patrick Kane does the heartbreak celebration with Austin Matthews behind him like a scene at Titanic, right? So I think, look, you're not going to get the same Patrick Kane just with age, injury, and the type of surgery he's getting. So measure your expectations, front offices and coaches, because he's not the Patrick Kane of old.
But what if we do get that Patrick Kane, Justin Pooni? It could happen. I'm in the same boat as you in terms of, looking at past players who've gone through this. Yeah. Obviously, most notably, like you mentioned, Nick Backstrom, same age. He came back, played 8 games this season, and basically shut it down. Yeah. And him and his GM are saying, listen, he's just not playing at the level that he wants, and it's unlikely that he'll return. Yeah. And going back to Jovanovski, he actually described that surgery. And this was in 2014. So I'm sure things have changed. Like you said, you're not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. We just play one on TV. But he said this is describing the surgery. They dislocate your joint, pull it out of your leg, then shave the head down to a certain size and cap it with titanium. Then they do the same to your socket, shaving out the socket and hammering in a new socket where everything that's just kind of joins together. Yeah. At the time when Jovanovski did that, I believe he was around 37, 38 years old.
He was in his later 30s.
It was his last year anyway, so I think the expectation was he wasn't going to play much. But if you look at Patrick Kane, 35 years old, 1,100 plus games, coming off this surgery, you can tell when he was with the Rangers, he didn't really look like the old Patrick Kane, which, when you get older and you're a player who has as many miles as he does, you're going to slow down.
And also, he was in a new city, new system, new players around him.
Of course.
He
needs to adapt.
Panarin, but he never had that adaptation process.
Yeah, and I think the expectation needs to be tempered, I think, from every single team. And I think if you're the Leafs or if you're the Buffalo Sabres, potentially New York Rangers, Tampa Bay Lightning, Dallas Stars, you have to assume you're getting a Patrick Kane that is not going to log 15-plus minutes every single night. He's a secondary scorer at best, and you have to be be willing to take the risk that maybe midway through the season, he might have to shut it down.
Yeah. Well, Albert, again, the comparison is not, I'm not comparing the players to each other because we know how great Patrick Kane is, but kind of what Sam Gagner is doing with the Oilers or has done in the Oilers in the past, or what he was doing with the Canucks.
Just show up?
Just show up and be a second unit power play guy. You're not going to log a lot of minutes 5-on-5. You're going to be solely a power play guy. Because when you look at Patrick Kane and that hip, I would not want him to be out. He's going to lose a ton. He wasn't the fastest guy to be on. His hands are still fast, but his fleet of foot, he's not the fleetest of foot, excuse me. I think he would play 10 minutes a game, 10, 12 minutes a game, majority power play minutes. And I think that's, if he can become and be like a power play specialist, a guy that can, bring wisdom and stuff like that on the special team side. But that is something that I think could be very beneficial. But 5-on-5 after this type of injury and this type of surgery, I wouldn't put it past any team to expect that Patrick Kane can provide that.
No, he hasn't played a full season since I think the 2017-2018 season. So, okay, with all that in mind, I mentioned some of the teams that are involved. You have the Lightning, Sabres. He's from Buffalo. Mm-hmm. Florida seems like a landing spot. Carolina, Dallas, and the Maple Leafs. I saw John Shannon report that he's already had a meeting with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
In Oakville. He's training in Oakville.
So I don't know how that would work, but my next question is, how much, if you're a GM of one of these teams, are you willing to pay for Patrick Kane?
Well, speaking of Larry Brooks, infamous New York Rangers reporter, said the Rangers are out.
Yeah,
they're not going to be in on him. If I'm a team, now again, I'm not going to sign him with any term. It's just going to be to the rest of the season. Probably be a prorated deal. Think about it. He's going to sign the next couple weeks, end of November, early December. Probably got to practice a little bit before he gets in the lineup. So you're thinking about maybe mid-December he plays, right? Maybe, $1 million.
You think that's what he wants, though? He wants to play on a contender.
And exactly.
According to all reports, he wants to play with a contender.
Right.
I mean, and if there's a bidding war between 4 or 5 teams, that number is going to go north of $1 million, and it'll probably go to the team with the most cap space.
Yeah, but then again, it's up to Patrick Kane can determine what matters to him the most. Does he want to win? Does he want to play on a prominent role on a contending team? Or does he just want to be in a locker room with the best opportunity to win no matter his role? And will he sacrifice his ego? Because again, he's a superstar, right? He's probably the greatest American-born player of all time, right? With respects to Roenick, Modano, Hull, right? Well, Brett Hull's born in Canada.
He's American.
American-born player,
okay.
right?
Austin Matthews.
So don't put him.
I'm just saying.
Austin Matthews had a long, long way to go to ever sniff what Patrick Kane has done in this league. Okay?
That's fine. It's so easy to trigger you. It's unbelievable.
And I hate Patrick Kane. He's caused me a lot of tears in my life.
As a Canucks fan.
As a Canucks fan, right? But if I'm Patrick Kane, I want to go to the best situation that means the most to me and my family, right? Is that winning? Then if you're going to win, then I would say, like you mentioned, a team like Florida, a team like Dallas, a team like...
I think all the teams I mentioned
are
minus the Buffalo Sabres. They're on the cusp of being a playoff team.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about them as being contenders, and he's from Buffalo, so it kind of makes sense. But I just... reports are suggesting that he wants to go on a team and be a true contributor. He doesn't want to be a bit part player. He wants to be a top 6 guy. He wants to be on the top power play unit. If you're saying you want to be on a contender, you want to contribute, and that's what we have to expect from Patrick Kane, I just don't think that's possible with him at this moment. Even if he didn't have this surgery, he's still got a ton of miles on him. 1,100 plus games throughout his entire career.
And that's not including playoff games too, right? So. Look, a team that I kind of would want him to see him play for, the Detroit Red Wings. I think he'd be wonderful in Detroit. It's close to home in Buffalo.
Yeah, but again, not a contender.
They're third in the Atlantic Division.
They're not Justin, Stanley Cup contender, the Detroit Red Wings?
Are you telling me this, right? Right now, if the playoffs were to start today, they'd play Florida in the first round.
They'd be in the playoffs, so you could consider them a contender because they're in the playoffs.
But him and DeBrincat have chemistry before from their times in Chicago, right? Put him on the top line. Put him on that top line with Dylan Larkin and DeBrincat, right? You have something there, Albert.
That's one line. Even Yzerman said himself they're ahead of schedule based on the way that they're playing.
I understand that,
they're not even expected to be in the playoffs
I understand that, Albert, but things in sports move ahead of schedule. Nobody expected.
So you think Patrick Kane's a missing piece for the Detroit Red Wings to win the Stanley Cup? Come on, you're smiling.
I'm saying this. I think Patrick Kane fit-wise would be very good in Detroit. I think him with DeBrincat, Larkin, and that roster they have there, I would be very interested. Look, you got Lucas Raymond, David Perron. You have some.
But we were just talking about how he's not going to be that Patrick Kane. So what are you expecting him to contribute?
But things
like let's say from December 1st to the end of the season.
Right.
Give me a goal mark for Patrick Kane.
If Patrick Kane get you 10 goals and
10 goals, that's gonna make the Detroit Red Wings a Stanley Cup contender. Bringing in a player that scores 10 goals.
Okay, look at this. Let's look at the.
They might not even make the playoffs.
Let's look at the teams that you just mentioned. Okay, is he gonna play in the top 6 in Toronto? Is he gonna play in the top 6 in Toronto?
Probably not.
Exactly. Is he gonna play in the top 6 in Tampa Bay?
No.
No. Is he gonna play in the top 6 in Florida?
Possibly.
Potentially, but then again,
and that's more because they have injuries.
Exactly. But once those injuries those guys come back from injury, is he going to play in the top 6? No. Dallas.
Okay.
No. So what I'm saying, if you want,
so what you're telling me is that hold on, but what you're telling me is by bringing in Patrick Kane, it doesn't truly make you a legit cup contender.
No, it's not. So
then what's the point? If he wants to be on a cup contender and wants to be a contributing piece to the team, then why would he go to Detroit?
Does he? We don't know what he wants. By all reports, is he wants to play.
He's not playing just to come back and play.
Exactly. So does he want to play on? Does he want to take any role on a contending team and deal with the ramifications and swallow his ego, like I mentioned before, or does he want to play on a good team but have a bit more of a prominent role, like Detroit, who's on a Stanley Cup contender, but he can play more of a prominent role for a team that will probably be in the playoffs this year?
If he wanted to just come back just to play, he would sign a cheap deal and play with Bedard in Chicago.
I don't think so.
If he just wanted to play, Chicago would 100% do that.
Optically,
they have the cap space to do it. They pay him $1 million. He can play.
Optically, it would not look good.
What do you mean optically?
He said his goodbyes to Chicago. He can't go back. They moved in a different direction.
Or he would just go to the Sabres.
But think about this: if you're the Chicago Blackhawks, why would you bring back probably the greatest player in franchise history back when you're just trying to start a new era? You can't go backwards, right?
No, I agree with what you're saying. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, if he just wanted to play, he can just go play in Chicago. He can just go play in Buffalo because he's from Buffalo. But he doesn't want to do that. He wants to go to a team where, again, he can contend and really contribute.
Detroit's third in the Atlantic Division, brother.
They have no chance to win the Stanley Cup.
But then again, out
of the teams that I just listed, the Lightning, with Vasilevsky coming back, cup contender. The Sabres, not a cup contender. The Panthers, absolutely. Carolina Hurricanes, absolutely. The Stars, yes. Maple Leafs, make fun of them if you want to, but they're in that conversation.
You just said on Monday they're not a Stanley Cup contender.
Well, I'm saying they can't win the Stanley Cup with the team that they have.
So they're not a Stanley Cup contender.
You know what I'm saying. So I think out of those teams, he's probably looking at that. Like, I can join those teams and make a difference.
He's not coming to the Leafs. Okay, there's gonna be
probably not. They have no cap space, and we'll get to that in our next segment when we're talking about Zadorov going to the Leafs. I don't know how that's going to happen. If you have no cap, even if he wants a super discount at $1 million, they still can't afford him.
Yeah, it's true. Look, I think the best situation, because I think Patrick Kane wants to stay in the Eastern Conference. I don't think he wants to go back out west, considering where he's from and all of that. He's training in Toronto and all of that. I just think, look, Detroit makes a lot of sense to me. It does.
Yeah, I mean, it fits, but they're not winning.
Think about this. I'm
sorry.
A young and upcoming Canucks team signed which former Leaf? Matt Sundin, right? Now, although he didn't play a whole lot in Vancouver, guys like Ryan Kessler were said that Matt Sundin made a great impact in the short time that he was there to teach him how to be a pro, how to deal with certain different things, right? I'm saying this, regardless, the Wings might make the playoffs this year. They could win a round. They could win a few games, whatever. This is the beginning of the Yzer plan. If a guy like Patrick Kane comes in and can give some wisdom to young players like Larkin and DeBrincat and the Lucas Raymonds, the young core they're building in Detroit, that could be just as beneficial, right?
But I don't think that's what he wants to do. His time as a professional hockey player in the NHL is limited. It might be a year. It might be a half a year. Maybe it's 2 years if he bounces back and that this new technology that we have with surgeries, and he comes back as maybe 70 or 80% of the player that he was.
That's saying a lot.
That's saying a lot, right? So in this small window that he has to make the most of it. Yeah. Why would he be like, well, you know what? I could just go to Detroit and I could mentor some guys. But what the hell's the point of coming back? He has the money, he has the cups.
But that's what I'm saying. With Detroit, he'll also play in the top 6 as well, Albert.
They're not winning the Stanley Cup, Justin Pooni.
If he wants to win the Stanley Cup, Albert, what I'm trying to say is he's not going to play in the top 6 is what you're telling me he wants to do.
Right. But I think he'd be willing to take that reduced role to play on a contender.
So you're telling me he comes to Toronto, right? Hypothetically speaking, everybody in this office gets the wish they want. You get the heartbreak, and Austin Matthews is holding it from behind like Jack and Rose from the Titanic.
For the record, I don't want Patrick Kane in Toronto, but go ahead.
Other Leaf fans in the building do, okay? Say, for example, he does it. Is Patrick Kane going to be okay in Toronto every day getting talked to the media about, why are you only playing 10 minutes a game? Did you think he wants that?
If there's someone who can deal with it, it's a vet like him.
Patrick Kane and the media haven't always had the best relationship.
Yeah, it's true, but listen,
right?
he's been through it.
Ryan Reeves has been put to the ringer already. He's getting benched now.
Let's not make that comparison.
I'm not saying on the ice. I'm saying in the locker room, the media, perceptive like that. Ryan Reeves has had talks with the media every single day, right?
That's what it is.
And now he's getting thrown in the press box, right? Imagine Patrick Kane. And it would be so Leafs if they did this. It would follow the likes of bringing old, washed-up players like Giordano, Thornton, Foligno, Spezza,
have some respect for
Marleau,
Mark Giordano.
Lindros, Brian Leach. The list goes on. Jason Allison, Jason Blake.
I'll agree with you on that. It does reek of a Maple Leafs signing.
It stinks.
Doesn't mean it'll be bad.
And how did all those work out?
Yeah, not so well.
None of them worked out. So if I'm the Maple Leafs, stay as far away from this as possible because you don't want to bring in a washed-up Patrick Kane to the Maple Leafs because it's just going to fit with that stench and that just the reek of desperation to grab headlines about bringing in Patrick Kane. It's disgusting.
The guy who wants Patrick Kane to go play for the Detroit Red Wings and mentor and potentially win them a Stanley Cup just called them washed. I just wanted to mention that right off the top. Okay, coming up in the next segment, we'll talk about some more sweepstakes. This time, Nikita Zadorov, who requested a trade after losing to the Toronto Maple Leafs last week. Well, his agent did anyway. Looks like he's on his way out, plus a few more players out of Calgary. We'll discuss Zadorov's future coming up next.
Now, Albert, 15 games in, the Calgary Flames have been a little bit above a disaster, I would say. A 5-8-2 record, 12 points, looking like hot trash. You know, speaking of the Flames, they're hot trash right now. Nikita Zadorov, came out in the media saying that he doesn't really want to re-sign in Calgary, fitting the lines of a lot of players that don't really want to play in Calgary because, it's not very pretty. The arena's kind of, right? His agent, Dan Milstein, also said that he has requested a trade. It happened on Friday after he laid out Tyler Bertuzzi. And apparently people in the Leafs locker room were saying that this is exactly the guy they want. So he is the hottest name on the trade market right now, Albert. My question to you is this. Which team should go after him the hardest? And how much will it cost to bring in a defenseman like Nikita Zadorov?
Yeah, it's tough to say how much he'll cost because the Flames are in such a good position right now where you have multiple teams wanting these players. Like we're talking Zadorov, Tanev, Hannafin, Elias Lindholm, and Craig Conroy, the GM of the Flames, doesn't have to rush this move. He can wait up until the deadline and make a move. I think the big question is, though, I'll get back to answering yours, but the big question is, what do they want to do? Is this a rebuild, a retool, or are they kind of still in? Because it can be a bubble wildcard playoff team. So we'll see who they want to keep on. But where he'll land, I think it's either the Canucks, I think it's Vancouver or Toronto. I don't know. I think it makes more sense for Vancouver because they have a bit more cap flexibility. The Leafs, you would have to move on from probably John Klingberg, which essentially is a healthy scratch or has been. They're calling it an injury. He hasn't been great this season. He's making $4.125 million. So you'd have to hope that the Flames would be able to take on that salary and want that type of player. And if you're looking at Zadorov, you're probably throwing in a prospect and you're probably throwing in a pick. And you're going to need Calgary to retain salary. So for the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think it gets a bit tricky. And if you're Craig Conroy and you're getting that type of offer from a team where you have to retain some salary and you're looking at a team like the Vancouver Canucks, that you might not have to do that. They could give up a bit more in terms of assets. I'd lean toward the Canucks, but I think it's both of these teams that make the most sense.
I think I agree with you after that whole last thing with Patrick Kane where we were at each other's throats about that. Look, the Canucks love Nikita Zadorov. Right. Everybody in Vancouver is talking about how the Canucks, whether this season acquire him through trade or in free agency July 1st, once he's expected to hit there, Vancouver will be one of the heavy suitors for him. And Vancouver will be at one of his preferred destinations because his agent Dan Milstein has a bunch of Canucks clients, and they have a good relationship between agent and team, right? The Toronto Maple Leafs, as you mentioned, I don't know how they make this move, right? You have to give up a John Klingberg or some other to make the money work. Now the Canucks, again, you said the Leafs have no flexibility. The Canucks have $100,000 of cap space.
Yeah.
Right. So would it be a guy like Anthony Beauvillier, a forward who was brought over in the Bo Horvat trade that, got off to a very strong start in Vancouver, but has kind of fallen out of touch and out of favor with Rick Tocchet? He's a pending UFA. He's making $4.1 million right now. Zadorov has a $3.75 million cap hit. So, and Beauvillier is a 26-year-old forward. This would be his third team. Again, was it a guy like Connor Garland, who's got a $4.95 million cap hit? Thank you, Jim Benning, for that.
And a good player, though, too, right?
I mean, Garland's been good, but is he $4.95 million?
Well,
no.
I mean, you could say the same thing with Klingberg on the Leafs.
Exactly. But Klingberg's got 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah.
Connor Garland has 2 more years at 4.95, which is an anchor.
Yeah.
When we're looking at the price for a Nikita Zadorov, now, I think he's a younger, when I watch him play, he's like a younger version of a Luke Shen, right? A physical defenseman, right? Very physically imposing out there on the ice. Not going to wow you offensively, but he's a stabilizer on your back end, right? He's a guy who can log. I think he's averaging, 18 minutes a game or so, in around almost 19 minutes this season. He's plus 10, plus 11 the last 2 seasons that take you a little bit plus minus. But when I look at this guy, Nikita Zadorov, he's a guy who can eat up some minutes, you can put him up and down your lineup, wherever. And if I'm the Canucks, if I'm the Leafs, if I'm the Devils, if I'm, Colorado, Tampa Bay, the Rangers, whichever team out there that needs help on the back end, I'm going to be very interested. I'm going to make a call. Now, like you mentioned, Craig Conroy, he's in an interesting situation where, okay, Zadorov is not going to want to be here. What about Chris Tanev, right? He's going to be a UFA as well. Noah Hannafin. Now, I think Pierre LeBrun was saying, or somebody was saying that Hannafin almost signed a extension worth north of $60 million last month. Yeah, LeBrun. But then he decided to go against it, I guess, realizing he doesn't want to play.
Players don't want to stay in Calgary.
Again, it's respect to Calgary. They advertise a whole lot here in Toronto about you should move out to Alberta because it's cheaper, but the quality of life there is not as good, right?
Well, I don't know about that.
I'm saying it. I don't care. Put me on record about it.
The quality of life?
The quality of life in Alberta. Have you seen Alberta before?
I've been.
Would you live there?
I mean, I was in Lethbridge. It was minus 41, and I almost got frostbite.
There you go.
That's Canadian winter. What are you going to do?
It's not minus 41 here.
Okay. Continue.
But what I'm saying is this. If I'm Craig Conroy, I have the pieces to move out to accelerate this rebuild because nobody's going to touch Huberdeau. Nobody's going to touch Kadri. You're stuck with those two things forever. Bro, nobody's touching the Huberdeau contract.
The Huberdeau one will be difficult. I think you can move Kadri. Kadri's got a cup. He's proven he can do it in the playoffs.
I don't know.
With Colorado.
But there's a lot amount of term on that deal, right?
So what happens when they raise their hand, right? Let's say these players start moving out of Calgary. Mm-hmm. You think Kadri's going to be like, well, I'm fine just sitting here during a rebuild? Probably not.
Well, he can't. Well, you can't trade him.
Yeah.
That contract's not movable whatsoever. And what does he have? He has a no-move clause. Huberdeau's got a no-move clause. So you look at that, they're 10.5 and 7. That's $17.5 million between those two players.
I feel like
that's horrible.
I feel like what Calgary is going to do with Huberdeau, because they're stuck, they have to find players that fit with Jonathan Huberdeau, which is that's a bad position to be in. But anyway, back to Zadorov. For me, on the Leafs side, I think they're at this point in this project with Matthews and Marner and Tavares and Nylander, whatever you want to call it. Project Win the Stanley Cup.
Operation Win the Stanley Cup?
I've dubbed it that. Operation Win the Stanley Cup, where you're at the point now, you just signed Matthews. You might lose William Nylander if you don't re-sign him. You're going to lose Tavares in a couple seasons. You're going to have to re-up on Mitch Marner, where it's now you got to be able to make that big move. And this is why GMs get paid the big dough, to make these types of moves. And you might have to move some players you don't necessarily want to move. They have the ability, I think, to acquire a Zadorov and a Tanev, but you're going to have to be willing to give away some pieces. You might have to be willing to give away a first-round pick. Klingberg might have to go. I know it's not the most appealing player at the moment, but I think it's somewhat appealing to Calgary because he's on an expiring contract. And maybe you flip him at the deadline to a team that wants him if he could turn his game around. Then you're looking at another player. Let's say you want to bring in Zadorov and Tanev, right? If you're Treliving. You flip Klingberg and Liljegren, let's say, or another defenseman. You probably throw in a pick.
But Albert, the Leafs
And you're throwing in a
picks.
prospect.
They don't have picks to give away. They have.
Well, they got first rounder in 2024.
They got their first round pick in 2024. They don't have a second round pick for the next 3 years.
I know.
24, 25, 26. They don't own their own third round pick.
I know, but listen.
What are you going to give up to get him?
It's not my job to figure out what to do.
Are you going to give a first round pick for Nikita Zadorov who could walk July 1st?
Hey, if that's what you got to do, if you want to accelerate this thing and try and win a Stanley Cup, what do they have to address at the moment?
Nikita Zadorov.
But hold on. What do the Leafs have to absolutely address?
The back end.
Exactly. And what does Zadorov and potentially Tanev do?
But you can do that in ways of being smarter without.
Okay, so what ways?
If I'm the Leafs, right?
What is a smart way of doing that? The Leafs are in a horrible position. They're in the same position that the Edmonton Oilers are with their goaltending.
Yes.
Everyone knows they need defense.
Yes, I
So
understand.
you're going to get fleeced. So no matter what you do, if it's Zadorov, Tanev, somebody else,
right,
you're getting fleeced.
I get it. I understand it completely what you're saying. But if I'm Brad Treliving, I know that Zadorov does not want to be in Calgary. He is not going to sign long term. You utilize that information you're given as an advantage, regardless of the price that Craig Conroy jacks up. Teams are not going to. Once a player comes out and says, "I don't want to be here anymore," the value goes down. Right?
But
we saw it.
But hold on. There's a bidding war.
Okay,
you're going to have 4 or 5 other teams
this is the other upside,
offering good deals.
But this is the other upside that Toronto has over other teams, especially Vancouver. Zadorov to Vancouver, that's an in-division trade. You're going to see him a whole lot more. There's going to be a premium price on that because you're trading him to a team within your division that's could bite you in the ass every day.
Right.
Whereas the Leafs and other Eastern Conference teams have an upper hand because they won't have to see him ever again, right? Also, another upside for Brad Treliving is who used to work under him? Craig Conroy, right? So there's that relationship there where deals can be made a whole lot more. Whereas you look where other teams, it's open season, right?
But it doesn't mean that Conroy is going to take a half-ass deal because he's
but
buddies
he might
with
take
Treliving.
whatever the best situation for
sure.
the Flames is. Now, if the team like the Canucks are sure hell is not going to offer a first-round pick for Nikita Zadorov. At least I think so. They're not. This front office isn't that dumb. But if it could get we don't know, right? What I think what the Leafs need to do is they need to be wary of, look, the last 4 or 5 years, Albert, they've gone fairly heavy at the deadline. Last season they put all their chips in the middle.
They really did.
You have to be smart and be calculated about this because think about it. People may think the window's closing, but you still have another 4 years after this with Austin Matthews. You can manipulate the situation. We talked about on Monday. Or that's moving one of the core 4 pieces out to extend this window open, right? You have to be able to try to juggle thinking about, yes, this year, maximizing the situation winning, but also figuring out how to build out the rest of the roster. And I think that's what we're seeing this year with Brad Treliving. I can tell you this year so far, Tyler Bertuzzi is not going to be back next year. I can almost bet my house on that. I don't think Max Domi will be back next year. John Klingberg sure as hell won't be back next year, right? So the way I look at the Leafs is this. Figure out who are the staples that are going to be here going into next year, right? And start figuring out how to, yes, put the best team forward for this year, but also figure out ways to maneuver. Think 2 steps ahead is what I'm trying to say. And when I look at that, you have a distressed asset in Zadorov. Utilize that to your advantage. Play that in the negotiating ploy.
Well, I'm sure they will, and every team will do that.
Yeah.
But so how long do you wait? If you're the Leafs,
it doesn't matter how long.
If you're Treliving, you're like, oh, we got more years with Austin Matthews. We have a few more years to figure this out. That's not the position that Toronto Maple Leafs are in. They're in a position where it's like we got to get past the first and second round. We got to win the Stanley Cup. When does this ever happen? Where a guy like Tanev and Zadorov are available mid-season. And you have the ability to acquire them.
But look at the cap hits, Albert.
I know, but you can make those things work. I understand. Listen, if Conroy and Treliving are buddies like you're saying, and they can make something work, then maybe Conroy has to take hits on those salaries and retain 50%.
But then he's
going to
want a premium price. He's going to want a first round pick.
That's what it is. That's the job.
Hell,
you have to make these decisions.
What happens if you might have to give away a guy like another prospect that the Leafs don't want to give up? I mean, it's only really nice. Well, that's you want to give up.
No, you go Nick Abruzzese, who's played with Coronado, that connection Eric Francis we're talking about. Okay, this decor that the Leafs have right now, we both agree on this. There's no way that's a Stanley Cup winning decor.
No.
Okay, let's say they go and get Zadorov and Tanev.
They're not going to get both.
But I'm just saying, so just Zadorov. Now you got Riley and Brody as your top two
Yeah.
guys. You got maybe McCabe and Zadorov, and your bottom three, or your bottom, your two guys in your bottom six is Giordano, Timmins, or Lagesson, or Benoit.
I still don't like that defense.
But I'm just saying, now you have some more flexibility. You're not playing Giordano 20
But
minutes
here's the
a
thing:
night.
what do you have to give up to get Zadorov? Are you going to have to give up?
I just told you. You're going to have to give up one or two defensemen.
So you're
hold on. Calgary has to retain salary,
Right.
and a pick probably,
So
and a prospect.
you're depleting already a weaker unit to add just one piece to it. So
Listen,
then it's
that's-
basically the same. You're in the same problem you're already in.
How are you in the same problem that you're in?
You're saying if you trade one or two defensemen from this defense core and
Yeah.
a pick for Zadorov,
If you're going for Zadorov, you could trade Klingberg, a pick, and probably a prospect. And if that's the price you got to
I
pay.
don't know.
You want to win the Stanley Cup?
if I'm Calgary, why would I touch that deal?
What do you mean? You're getting a pick, a prospect, and a defenseman on an expiring contract
Yeah.
that you could probably flip at the deadline. Listen, I don't think it's going to happen because there's so much that needs to be done. But if you're a GM, especially in Toronto, you want to win a Stanley Cup, these are the moves you have to make. I'm sorry. Everyone's saying,
I agree with you.
That's all I hear is, they shouldn't do this, they shouldn't do that, it costs too much. Who cares? Who cares if it costs too much? You want to win now? Go and make it happen. And you're getting Zadorov. You don't have to sign him next season. You can let him walk if you want to, and then address that in the offseason.
Look, I'm just poo-pooing your whole idea because I want him to go to the Canucks.
Yeah, he's gonna go somewhere. It's so interesting because you don't see this happen.
No.
Midway through the season, you're seeing really good players being put up for sale.
Well,
And I
he
think a
put
lot of
himself
teams.
up for sale.
Eh?
He put himself up for sale.
Essentially, yeah, he really did. And at the beginning of the season, he was dogging on the players.
Yeah.
He goes, Sutter's not here right now. What's the excuse? Essentially calling out Huberdeau.
Yeah.
Saying, listen, he's not here, perform. So Zadorov is not, I don't think is liked very much in Calgary, at least in that locker room.
He doesn't like Calgary very much either.
So he's going to move. Great conversation there.
Great stuff.
Justin Pooni. Okay, coming up after the break, the GM meetings are going on. They're talking about NHL overtimes and how to change it and improve it. You think it's fine. I kind of think it's fine, but it does need to be changed. We will discuss. All right, Justin. So the NHL GM meetings are underway in Toronto, and one thing that was discussed is rule changes to create more offense in overtimes. GMs want to focus on a format that can create more scoring chances. Just so everyone knows, the current format, 3-on-3 for 5 minutes, sudden death, a tie after OT goes to a shootout. So basically what they don't like teams keeping too much possession in overtime and circling back and resetting. The regroup. They want to change that. So some suggestions have been adding a shot clock or just completely eliminating the ability to go past the red line. Once you cross the red line, you're in. You can't go past it.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Stupid. Don't do it. Leave it the way it is. Why are you excuse me. When I look at this situation, you brought in the 3-on-3 for 5 minutes. It's great. I love it. I think it's awesome. Right? I think 65% of games now end in 3-on-3 compared to between, it was like 48% or something around that area before with the shootout. That is exactly what the NHL wanted, and that's what they got. They wanted to bring in the shootout, no more ties, eliminating the ties in the sport because only the NFL is a real sport that has a tie, and everybody hates it. Whenever a team ties in the NFL, what do we always complain about, Albert? Why the hell is there a tie? We want a winner and we want a loser when it comes to sports. Even in the regular season, yeah, the same thing. I don't want a tie. You talk about player safety and all this and that. 3-on-3 for 10 minutes, right? That's a whole lot of mileage, Albert. Just leave it the way it is. It's fine. It's fine, right? If you want to tweak certain things about you can't bring the puck past the red line, again, and regroup or whatever. The whole shot clock thing they proposed was stupid and gimmicky. You want to just leave it the way it is. It's fine. Don't ruin it. If teams are regrouping, so be it. They found a way don't be lazy, coaches. Find a way to break the regroup. Find a way to do something, right? Strategize. Use your brains. Don't have the league give you handouts to take that away because the team's going to find another way to expose the system per se. So I think this is just laziness on the behalf of coaches. Coaches should be able to figure out a way to break the regroup.
Yeah.
Figure it out, coaches. Figure it out, hockey staffs. Figure it out.
I'm with you. I like the overtime right now. I think it's exciting. The other night when there was the Flames and Leafs in overtime, I thought it was great. I don't like the shootout. So I'm down with getting rid of the shootout. I'm down with extending overtime. I know you're talking about player safety. I get it. I'm just from a fan perspective.
Yeah.
I'd make the overtime 10 minutes. I'd get rid of a shootout, 2 points for a win, 1 point each if it ends in a tie, and no points for making overtime if you get rid of the shootout. I hate the 1 point. Oh, you're in overtime, you get a point. Why? I get it. It makes more sense for parity, and that's what Bettman wants.
Yeah.
I don't like it. And the whole shot clock thing is strange to me. How do you reset the shot clock? Is it a shot on goal? Do you just take it if it's a block
Is
shot?
it when the other team gets possession, or like
do you just shoot the puck against the boards to reset the clock?
I don't like it either. I think it's a dumb idea.
The red line thing is interesting. You cross the red line, you can't go back. That's going to create more offense because teams are going to give up the puck, odd man rushes, breakaways. You're going to get a lot of that, and overtime is going to end a lot quicker in that scenario.
Yeah, look,
a lot of times you see players go into the zone, around the net, circle back, go back into their own zone, then come back.
I might be I don't mind the shootout.
No, it's horrible, man.
It's
brutal. It's not great. It's not entertaining. It's taken away. You know what it's taken away from? The penalty shot that happens. That rarely happens. Well, this season it's happened a lot more.
A whole bunch this season.
But it's taken away that excitement to watch the penalty shot.
I don't know. I don't mind it. Maybe it's because I've grown up with it, pretty much.
The first one I think was 2005.
Yeah, I was like 9 years old.
Sens Leafs.
Yeah, first game too.
Who won that?
I don't remember.
Ottawa did. You know who scored the goal? The winner?
Daniel Alfredson.
Danny Heatley.
Oh, wow.
50. In that shootout, if I remember correctly, Danny Heatley, Alfredson, don't remember the other guy, but for the Leafs it was Lindros.
Bum.
Come on, that's disrespectful.
With the Leafs, was he?
Eric Lindros is not a bum.
With the Leafs, he was a bum.
Okay, with the Leafs, he wasn't great.
Jason Allison, bum.
Was he 41?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so again, falling back to that Patrick Kane thing. Oh, I forgot Ed Belfour too, another washed player that came to the Leafs at the end of his career.
He was great. What are you talking about for the Leafs? We're not doing this. We're not doing this Leafs argument. We're talking
Leaf
about
fans. Another one on the list. Patrick Kane. Put it up on the list.
We're talking about overtime. So you wanted to keep it the same way?
Just keep it the same.
All right. Listen, I'm all about extending it. I think it's really exciting. I would extend
Dudes
it.
Are gonna be
I would
hurt.
add that red line. So 10 minutes, add the red line rule. You get more offense. Those games will end quicker.
I don't know. I just don't think that the 10 minutes, guys are going to get bagged, higher susceptible for injuries.
No, it's 3-on-3. It's shinny.
It's the NHL,
I know
Albert.
it's the NHL.
It's not shinny.
And these guys have the capability, if there's more odd man rushes and breakaways, to score goals early.
10
That's
minutes
exactly what's
in
going to
overtime?
happen.
I don't know.
Get rid of the shootout. Bring back the tie. No points for
The tie is so whack.
But if you telling these players, if this game ends in a tie after overtime, no points.
Nobody gets a point.
Both teams will push for that goal. Trust me.
Okay, but Albert, say both teams push for a goal and all of that, but say there's 25% of those games end in a tie.
That's high.
That's high.
3-on-3, 10-minute overtime, 25% of those games will not end in a tie.
Okay, fine. Even the 10% of games, right? Those teams, those owners will be so pissed to not get a point because of a tie, right? That ruins revenue, which that ruins playoff seeding, which then ruins revenue, which ruins the owners' pocketbooks. And we know owners, these billionaires, what do they care about the most? Those pockets and being lined with money. And when you affect that, then you are not doing a service to them, which Gary Bettman is basically works for the owners. So, no.
I didn't say it was the right solution. That's my solution.
It's not a good solution.
Is that going to happen?
No.
Probably not. They want the extra point, which is really bad. Get rid of that point. You lose and you get a point? What world do we live in? All right, that's it from us at Homestand Sports. Thanks so much for listening to the show today. Don't forget, we'll be dropping episodes throughout the week, so keep your eyes peeled for that. You can find Homestand Sports anywhere you download your podcasts, including Apple, Amazon, and Spotify. Once again, thanks for listening. I'm Albert Vartanian. This has been Homestand Sports, where stories, not stats, take center stage.